Yes, in my opinion, I think there's reasonable doubt.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think, yeah, there's abundant doubt.
Yes. And then we're going to get accused now of being very biased. But I just think that to just believe that the state's timeline just as it is. I mean, where is the poofy head guy? That's what I want to know. Where is he?
You know, this is the criticism. It's come up so many times. I've talked about it many times on my own channel, but it's very misinformed because there is a difference between having a bias and having an informed opinion. And the reason why we are expressing these opinions is because we're highly informed about the details of this case, and they're based on facts and on evidence that's come out at trial. Bias is by definition when you have an opinion about something that is not informed by fact and is often, frankly, resistant to fact. It's a process where you selectively refuse to hear facts that you don't want to hear because they're inconsistent with your preconceived notion. So I see a lot of that.
Hey guys, just wanted to start off with that because I'm going to be showing some clips from. Can you guys all hear me? I'm going to be showing some clips from a couple different creators that I've been following since Delphi started. And I just love what Andrea said right there about bias and how, bias is often used incorrectly. People say, oh, you're just biased. For example, people like us who feel that some of us, because like I said before, all opinions are welcome here. But people, I'll just say like me, okay? If I think that Richard Allen is innocent, then I have this bias. And that's couldn't be further from the truth, in my opinion. It is hard to see your own bias. However, the definition and what she just says there is bias is a preconceived notion that people have a belief. You have a belief about something and you believe for whatever reason, your gut instinct, some facts you think you heard, rumors, whatever. But once you get into a case or once you become informed with facts, then if you have a bias, you won't change your mind. You just dig in, right? But I was open to the fact that Richard Allen could possibly be innocent, although I had very little hope that the state had much evidence, just based on all the things that we heard pre-trial and all the sketchiness, just like in the Koberger case, right? Yes, I believe it's possible Brian is guilty. However, based on everything I've heard so far, it just seems like there's really not much of a case. But if I'm presented with evidence at trial that makes it really obvious it was him, then I will say, okay, I'm informed by the facts now, and I think he's guilty, right? So Andrea just makes a great point here, because having a bias is not the same as being informed and basing your opinion on being informed, right? So I just love that she says this. All right, so I just want to let her keep talking for a few more minutes, because
it comes up, anytime you express an opinion about something, and it's just a reflection of not really understanding the difference between being biased and being informed.
Yes, I agree. And don't worry, I'm in the same boat as you. You and I are there. Okay, let's get to some of we've almost in 47 minutes. So I just want to make sure we get to some of these stickers. I know people are always asking as well, especially when you hear it. They're so excited to ask questions. So SD said, did the jury ask to listen to the audio from Libby's phone or the AI enhanced video audio?
So we don't know for sure, because the public hasn't been allowed in to witness this part of the process, which in and of itself is pretty alarming, because actions that are taking place in the courthouse are open to the public throughout the criminal trial, and the judge is not allowed to communicate ex parte with the jury. So if the jury is coming into the courtroom, and there's going to be any communication whatsoever, that needs to be done on the record in the presence of the parties, and the public has a right to appear at that. I've been told that apparently a couple members of the press asked Judge Gohl specifically about this after the closing arguments, and were told that the public was not going to be allowed back in for these types of proceedings. So this is just another instance of a big problem from a constitutional standpoint. This is a closure of the courtroom and exclusion of the public from a part of the process that we're entitled to see under the First.
And that's another major problem with this case is the way that basically Judge Gull didn't allow them to present a third party culprit. I mean, even there was such an obvious abundance of people who could be considered third party culprits, including someone else named Elvis Field who confessed. Okay. And they weren't even allowed to bring any of that in. They weren't allowed to bring any of that in. So the trial in and of itself, the calls that were made for the trial made this very difficult for Richard Allen to, to defend himself, in my opinion.
First Amendment. So I'm very concerned about that, and hoping that I can get some more information about exactly what has transpired in the courtroom over the last couple of days. That said, the reports that I have seen that are out there from the media and so forth are suggesting that it was the enhanced video that they wanted to hear. And that does trouble me, for a lot of reasons, but the main one just being, I don't trust that enhancement.
So the jury had one question once they went back for deliberation, and that's what they're talking about right here. But basically, it was the enhanced video. They wanted to see the quote enhanced video, right? I think they really wanted to try to match that voice that they heard say down the hill to Richard Allen in retrospect, because they ended up convicting him. Okay. And then the other piece is, bridge guy, right? The whole bridge guy thing, which we'll talk about, because I'm curious what you all think about bridge guy.
At all. I don't trust anything that the law enforcement has done with the evidence at this point in time, because they've shown me they're so willing to be deceptive about it. So we'll see what that means, what transpires because of that. But it was not, to my understanding, the original video that they asked to view.
Interesting. I think people are also speculating, right? Do they really know what they were showing? I don't know, because it's being kept out of the public. How is that while you're on verdict watch and you're not allowed on the ramp now? You're like camping outside on the sidewalk, right? So like now, is your chair there? Is it ready for tomorrow?
My chair is right there. It's ready for tomorrow. We knew that rain was coming, and so we have there's plastic, protecting things on the chairs. Everything is ready to go. Nobody is really even sure at this point if the line is going to continue to hold. We have
which it didn't hold. If you listen to Andrea later this evening, basically she was able to get into the courtroom, as well as Lawyer Lee and Defense Diaries and Lauren from Hidden True Crime. They were able to get in, but they only let in 14 people instead of 24. And Andrea talks about how some of the media butted in front of them, like the mainstream media, including Dateline, she mentioned. So just remember that the next time you're watching Dateline, they're real dicks about it. They did not wait their turn. They weren't there every day. They haven't been covering this trial for months like some of these other people. And they aren't residents of Delphi, but they decided to just cut the line and run in because that's the kind of shitty people they are.
Tried so hard to keep things civil, but over the last several days, there's been a massive new wave of reporters and organizations and things like that showing up. And as I've mentioned before, it was representatives of the media who really broke ranks on the civility of the line that we've maintained for 20 days of trial. And it was the final day of closing that we're waiting to go up the stairs, and we're finally allowed to go up. Historically, we have always just, politely, orderly maintained our line going up the stairs. Well, this time, some of the folks in the back from different media organizations, they rushed the stairs. They made a bum rush and cut off the people that were in line ahead of them. So that really began the race to the bottom. And at this point, I think there's not a lot of trust that the line will be respected. So we're doing our best, but we're also just prepared for anything.
To bring your boxing experience to the table. Ready for that scrum.
Get my positioning. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh, man. So every 26 seconds, asked us twice. So you said, I feel like the defense used emotional manipulation as opposed to creating reasonable doubt. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think that's an interesting perspective because, from sitting through the closing arguments, it was, to me, the prosecution who
I just want to
just
skip
like
ahead here to a good question that gets asked to Andrea. Let me see if I can find it. How you guys doing tonight? How's everybody doing?
seriously whether a conviction would survive the review process. Means that he aired the documents at the time that particular confession was made.
This is the
So
part.
the
Okay.
February of 2012.
Okay, this is the part I think that's important for everybody that's asking about, wondering what it was that made the jury convict him. I really believe it came down to the confessions. I really do believe that. And Andrea gives, she kind of clarifies some of that right here. It's one of the reasons why I like watching Andrea, because because she's a defense attorney and an appellate attorney, she thinks like an attorney, and most good attorneys always know what the opposing side's arguments are and which one of those things hold water and how they need to address those things. And so Grizzly, who I love, this lady, Grizzly True Crime, she's hilarious if you ask me, but she asks Andrea, well, what about these confessions, right? And even in my own online community poll, which, it was a small N, but there was, I think, like 40 people, I asked, what's the most convincing evidence? And other than people saying there is no evidence, the only other answer that people gave, they didn't care about the unspent round. They didn't care about the eyewitness testimony. The only thing they cared about was the confessions. And I really, truly believe that's what lost him his liberties. So let's just listen to what Andrea says about those.
24 one remains the one that's more in question about whether he would have been in a psychosis at that time.
24 this year, February 2024.
Yes. February
Okay,
2024. This
Okay.
year.
Oh, I missed that. Sorry.
Okay.
Let me just rewind that a little
See,
bit.
Bonbon.
Let me just rewind that just a tad here. All right. It's hard to get these down just right.
What about them now would be different, other than the fact that you've arrested this guy and he's the only one you have in your crosshairs. It's a very troubling shift in perspective.
Yeah, I don't believe it, because they for so many years implied that there's more. It's just I don't know how they.
Just like
Surely
the
that
Brian
could
Koberger
that come up
case.
in if Richard Allen is convicted.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some strong grounds for the appeal process or not.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. I have a hard time believing that the order excluding the third-party culprit evidence, if nothing else, that to me, I think has got a very high chance of success, because Judge Cannoni keeps Judge Cannoni. Here I am.
Cannoni, I love it.
Judge Gohl keeps insisting that there's no nexus here, but nexus just requires some type of direct proof that is beyond speculation, that isn't just proximity. I mean, we talked about this before. It can't be like, oh, my neighbor has a key to my house, therefore he must be the person who murdered my wife in her bedroom. You would need something more than that. You would need, his DNA in the room. You need video of him, lurking around the house. I mean, something that suggests he actually did it, not that he just potentially had the opportunity to do so. Because many people will be in close enough proximity to a crime that, they could have, but it doesn't mean that they did. Well, with the third-party culprit evidence, you have confessions. You have people that are saying they did it, and that is direct evidence. That's the evidence that they're using against Mr. Allen. So I don't see how that case fails to meet the legal standard. And she's really, as the defense has pointed out, she's really never explained why exactly it's insufficient. So for that reason alone, I think they have a very good chance at a new trial. I've got concerns about the geofence data as well. We heard tons of location information throughout the course of this trial. It just seems like when it's location information that the defense wants to admit that's beneficial to their position, that only then does it become unreliable and not able to be used in court. So just all kinds of issues that have come up in this trial with what the defense has been allowed to do, what they've not been allowed to do, that I think is, unfortunately calls into question seriously whether a conviction would survive the review process.
Yes, that'll be interesting to see however this goes. Sarah says many times he confessed. So I know this is
Yeah,
one of
here it is right here.
the arguments. I would assume, Sarah, I'm just assuming, if
Mhm.
they say, I believe Richard Allen is guilty. And remember, everyone's entitled to their opinions here, guys. All opinions are welcome, right? So many
Mhm.
times he confessed, not during the psychosis period. He also did prior to discovery, getting to his lawyers. What would you say to that based on what you heard at the trial?
There are only two pieces of information from trial that would tend to support this claim, and the strongest one of those is the February the 24th of 2024, February of 2024 one, when he was later in Wabash. That one I think is accounted for by the major depressive disorder with psychosis diagnosis that explains that this can recur in continuing stressful conditions. So even if he didn't deteriorate to the extent that he was previously at in Westville, it doesn't preclude him from being in a psychotic state at that particular point in time. The only other instance that would tend to support that is that there was the written confession that he made to Warden Gallipo that he put in writing, that had a date placed on it of 3/5/23. The problem is that we heard testimony from multiple sources that tended to undermine that date. One is that Warden Gallipo himself may be the person who put that date on it, but also that the date that it was slipped under the door and delivered to the guard who then delivered it to Warden Gallipo was actually on April 5th of 2023. So this was after the discovery had been received. There was no dispute that Mr. Allen himself had received the discovery sometime in the mid to late March period and the very beginning of April at the latest. His discovery materials had been strewn around the cell at the time that he was entering the psychosis. So he had the documents at the time that that particular confession was made. So the February of 2024 one remains the one that's more in question about whether he would have been in a psychosis at that time.
But February of 2024, that means he was already in prison for how long? He was already in solitary confinement for how long? He got arrested in November of, I think it was 2023, maybe 20. Yeah. So November, December, January, February. I mean, 3 months in solitary confinement. We'll get into the confession thing because I just think it's total bullshit. I can't with this confession thing. So I just wanted to start with that because I do find it really interesting. I love Grizzly and I love Andrea. I do have a bruise here if you guys are wondering and you're like, what the hell is that? I got into a fight with somebody. So, I won. So you should see the other person. Anyway, basically, Grizzly's awesome, Andrea's awesome, and she's been doing great coverage. The whole confession thing, though, I can't. Guys, what do you guys think about the confessions? 61. Somebody asked, and I think it was Leslie, you asked in the chat, was it really 60? It was 61 confessions, allegedly, that he made. But the problem with the 61 confessions are none of them are recorded. None of them are recorded. They had eyes on him 24/7, including the guards and the suicide buddies or whatever they called them outside, right? And they had to write down everything he said, but they weren't having conversations with him, okay? Weren't having any conversations with this guy. So they were just basically moles, snitches, whatever you want to call them. They literally sat outside of his cell 24/7. Okay. And we don't have a recording of what kind of conversations were said. I don't know if you guys remember, but he was tased a couple times. One of the times he was tased, it came out in trial, was because the little tiny box that they put your meals through. And when somebody is like, when somebody puts the meals through, you know, like, because that's all he had was a fucking box and a door when he was in this 12-by-6 room or whatever it was. Okay. I'm all up in arms about this thing because I'm going to play you some stuff in a minute to show you what some of the other people on the other side are thinking. And I'm going to do so with respect, but there is something that is really bothering me, but I'll show it to you in a minute. Regardless, the little box, right? They slide your meals through. Apparently he put his hand in there. He just like put his hand in there. Why? I don't know. He's acting like a kid because he's bored. He's sitting in a room by himself 24/7. He gets out 1 hour a day to go to a larger cage. And then another time during the day to go talk to his psychologist, who's a whack job, who freaking follows true crime and has is in a Facebook group on it. I mean, come on. Anyway, he put his hand up there and he wouldn't move it. They asked him to move it again. He didn't move it. So they tased him. That's one of the reasons why they tased him, because he put his hand on the box. That's why they tased him. Okay. That's not okay. This is a presumed innocent man here. And if you're and by the way, I don't care for the argument that we have to prove he's psychotic, right? You don't give someone I am Haldol who you do not believe is psychotic, period. End of story. Otherwise, you're inviting a lawsuit for yourself. If something really bad happened to him, like he had some sort of, well, a lot of really bad things happen, but in terms of medically, if you're going to prescribe I am Haldol to someone who isn't psychotic or isn't in some type of a psychotic, you know, mental state, because sometimes, like, you know, you give people a shot of the I am Haldol and the Ativan, you know, in the ER just to calm them down because they're acting psychotic. But regardless, he was on it long term. He was prescribed I am Haldol. He didn't want to take it. He was considered psychotic. So there's no question here is if this guy is psychotic or not. Okay. You're psychotic. You're prescribing an antipsychotic. If he had like some severe allergic reaction and died from it, guess what they would have done in court? They would have said, we prescribed it. He needed it because he was psychotic. They wouldn't say, we weren't really sure. We just gave it to him because we just gave it to him. No, you give it to somebody because they're psychotic. Let's be honest. Like, stop it. It's like giving somebody Lipitor and, you know, and saying, we're not entirely sure if this person has hyperlipidemia. We're not exactly positive. Let's bring in 5 experts to determine whether or not they have high cholesterol. I know we prescribe them Lipitor and get their LFTs checked every 3 to 6 months, but we're not sure yet. No, get out of here. Come on. Let's be honest. When you prescribe this shit, it's because they're psychotic. It's in the story. So it just irritates the piss out of me that there's some like debate as to whether or not this guy developed psychosis. And when you have severe depression, one of the things that can happen is you can become psychotic. That is, psychosis doesn't have to be schizophrenia. You don't have to be a schizophrenic to develop psychosis. You can get psychosis from all kinds of things. And one of them, I'm positive, one of them is being confined into a box when you're innocent. One of the things I remember that Andrea talked about from the beginning, right? From the beginning, okay? Is one of the things that let's go back. Let's start from the beginning. Let's start from the beginning of this case, okay? Richard Allen was on the trail that day. He admitted it himself. How do we know this? Because when they asked for tips after the girls were found dead, he was a fool. He was stupid enough and silly enough to give them the tip that yes, he was on the trail that day walking. And no, he didn't see anything except for he named 3 people. He saw 3 girls. None of them were Abby and Libby. And I think they figured out during the trial, Andrea was able to figure out who that was. But regardless, he came forward and offered what he knew. Okay. That was his first mistake. Sadly enough, that's your first mistake. Okay. Anyway, apparently he was cleared after that. Thank you for your information. We jotted it down, went in a pile of thousands of tips. 5 years go by. 5 freaking years. Okay. And then we have Kagan Klein. Kagan Klein, everybody knows him. He's in prison right now. Why? Because he's a chomo. Okay. He's a fucking chomo. And just coincidentally, Kagan Klein was pretending to be this other guy, this guy named Anthony Schatz, who's like super built and hot and all this other stuff. And probably every teenage girl's dream guy, right? If you saw a picture of him, he's one of those guys, doesn't wear a shirt and he's all chiseled and stuff. Well, this guy, Anthony Schatz, was chit-chatting back and forth with, I don't know if it was Abby or Libby, it was one of them. And even on the day of the murder, they were chit-chatting, okay? Also, someone else that ended up chatting with Anthony Schatz was actually, it was Libby, because Libby's sister Kelsey ended up chatting with him too. She was probably like, how's my sister pulling this hot guy? Like, I want to get in on this action. I don't know. But she did. She chatted with him too. But it turns out 5 years into the investigation that they found out that Anthony Schatz was not a real person, that the girls were being catfished, that Libby was being catfished by this guy who legit lived in his mother's basement, who was overweight, who was a chomo, and his name was Keegan Klein. And they arrested him. And then a couple days after they arrested him, they went and they spent almost $1 million combing the river. I forget the name of the river, but it's downstream from Monon Bridge, combing that river. And people kept asking them, what are you doing? Is this related to Abby and Libby? Is this related to Delphi? And they wouldn't answer. They still haven't answered. But they had divers. I mean, they went all out. They spent a shit ton of money looking for something in that river that was never found. It was never found. And then they decide, well, we have to find this murder. I mean, this is a tiny town. Any town that has a murder is bad, right? But when you're in a tiny ass town and you only have a few cops and you know, that kind of stuff, you're looking hard at these people like, what are you doing? You need to find out who killed these little girls. There was a lot of pressure. An election was coming up. So they had, this part pisses me off too every time I think about it. A retired woman who decided to be a volunteer secretary started going through all the old tips. She wasn't supposed to read the tips. She was actually just supposed to organize the tips into cleared and not cleared to make sure and put them and organize them. That's what she was supposed to do, but not this lady. She decided to start reading things, and she found Richard Allen's tip in that pile. She's not a law enforcement person. She's not a criminal profile. She's not trained in reading if tips are worthwhile or not. Nothing like that. A volunteer who's a retired secretary. Okay. I don't know what her qualifications are, but I don't think she has the ones to be doing this, but that's fine. She did it anyway. And she found Richard Allen had been on the bridge that day. And she saw that he had been cleared of any wrongdoing or concern. He wasn't a suspect, but she didn't care about any of that because she just had a gut feeling inside. She just had a feeling like this needs to be looked at. So she brought it to the sheriff, who decided, yeah, we should probably look into this guy again. And that's how Richard Allen got on their radar after 5 years. That's what decided it. So when they called him in to question him, at first he just thought they were asking him questions about what happened. And some of the things he said weren't identical to the things he said 5 years earlier. For example, when the first time he went in, I think he said he was there between 2:30 and 3:30. And this time when he came in 5 years later, he said he was there between 12:30 and 1:30. They found that suspicious. I personally don't. I wouldn't be able to tell or remember the time of day I was somewhere 5 years earlier, even if it was a day a murder happened, unless I wrote it down and kept a journal or something. But they didn't like that. They thought it was suspicious. And so they kept talking to him. And that's when they decided that they should go and check his house. They wanted to check his house. And at that point during the interview process, they said, we want to get a warrant for your house and your car. And at that point, Richard Allen's like, no, like I've cooperated with you. I came in here. The first time I called in what I saw, which was not much. 5 years later, I'm coming in, you know, I'm listening to you. He gave his phone. They said, can we have your phone? He's like, yeah, sure. He gave his phone right up, which, by the way, nothing was ever found in his phone. You would think that a guy who committed some sick act like this would have some really messed up stuff on his phone, and he had nothing on his phone. And so then they wanted to go look in his house. And at this point, he's like, yeah, no. Yeah, I think this is concerning because now I feel like you're looking at me for this and I didn't do it. So they didn't like that, right? Because they just want to keep rolling over people. So they got a warrant to go into his house. And they found he has guns and knives. Holy shit. He lives in Indiana and he's a hunter. And they decided that one of those guns matched or could match the unspent round. And I'm not going to get into the unspent round again because that means it's a junk science and it's ridiculous. But that's what they based their warrant off of and their arrest. They arrested him based on that unspent round, which is just so sick. Okay. One of the things that Richard Allen said in that initial interview, or maybe the second or third time before he was officially arrested, was, I don't care what you say or what you do to me. You can't make me to confess to a crime I didn't do. Richard Allen said that. And that has stuck out to me because now, after how many months in prison, in solitary confinement, we have 61 confessions from this man. And this was a man who would be just like any of us who was being falsely accused of something. I don't give a shit what you say or do. I didn't do it. And then you're never going to be able to get me to say I did it because I didn't do it. Right? I'd be pissed too. And he said that. But then look at where we're at. 61 confessions we're supposed to believe. Of course, some of those confessions included confessions to other shit that didn't happen, like killing his grandchildren. I don't even know if he has any, molesting his daughter, which she got on the stand and said that never happened. So what's going on? It's insane to me, right? What do you guys think about it? That's crazy. Sometimes I think people say things just to be like mysterious. I mean, she is a tool for the enemy. Who's the tool for the enemy? I'm sorry, guys. I wasn't following the chat. I was getting so pissed off about this stuff. Her job. What's this? Her job. Look for someone to pin this on. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right? Like, unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It makes me so angry. Oh, the retired chick. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right? Did you guys know that? That shit pisses me off beyond belief. Because when you think about that, right? When you think about that, she has no qualifications to be making that determination. On top of which, he was already fucking cleared by the police. Okay? He was already fucking cleared. But after this whole Keegan Klein incident, and they spent all that money fishing through the lake and they couldn't find anything, that's when they decided to go through all the old shit and rearrange it and stuff like that. Because I think they really thought they were going to be able to pin it on Keegan Klein because he was the perfect, if you think about it, the perfect victim, the perfect one. Turns out they couldn't find anything. He is in prison though because he is a chomo, so that's good, right? And then we have all the other culprits. They weren't even allowed to present Keegan Klein and I still can't say that he wasn't part of it or whatever. I think it's just a little too suspect that this guy is catfishing these girls. And he, he's a known pedophile. They ended up finding stuff on his computer and everything. I think that's a little too suspect. And they weren't even allowed to bring him in as a third party culprit, even though the police themselves thought he was a was fishing to find stuff out. They just couldn't find anything out. Keegan Klein's lucky he didn't have a Sig Sauer. He's really lucky he didn't have one of those. Because trust me, if he had any kind of gun, they would have figured out how to tie that shit to him. And he'd be the one. Although I wouldn't feel so upset about it because he's a chomo. So. And to this point, right? To this point, up until, if you guys watch any of the old stuff from that old sheriff, his last name's Carter. I don't know if it's Brad Carter. That guy is so weird. Okay. He's super, super weird, that guy. And he used to say all kinds of cryptic shit. I'm so tired of people saying cryptic shit, honestly. I'm done trying to figure out the riddles that people try to throw out there. Just say it. Just spit it out, okay? Because I don't want to spend any more time doing the cryptic jump through riddles. I know something. but I can't say it because my safety is at risk. Then don't get on here and say it. Don't say shit. I don't believe any of that anymore. Every time I hear this bullshit, later on, it's nothing. These people are all full of shit that act like they're cryptic and they know shit that nobody else knows. Bullshit. I call it bullshit. If you know something, then say it. And the people that really know something aren't going to come on here and pretend like they know shit, okay? Because they know how to keep a secret. But anyway, the bottom line is, even the day Richard Allen was arrested, the sheriff, the weird sheriff who's now retired or whatever, was saying that they believe there's other people involved, that there are other people involved, and the investigation was ongoing. And now all of a sudden they're all getting up there in court swearing to God that like nobody else is involved. This is all Richard Allen. Yeah, the bullet was found at the crime scene, and a lot of people have questions about like when and stuff. It was found the day of the crime scene. It wasn't. There was a rumor. I heard something or read something. I don't know about how it was found years later. No, it was found like within. I don't know if it was the day of, but within like that week of the crime scene, they dug up that bullet and they put it away. So it was found. It was found pretty quickly. Yeah, I can't with these people. I know who killed them, but I can't say it. They just stop it. Stop it. Like, I can't deal with that shit anymore. I'm just gonna call these people the freaking Riddler. The Riddler. All right, so here, all right, so I like to challenge my opinions and beliefs and perspectives. I like to do that. Okay. So sometimes that can be uncomfortable. In fact, many times it can be very uncomfortable, but I still like to do it. Why? Because everybody has blind spots. We all think when we dig in that we're right. And sometimes we find out we're wrong and we feel like assholes, right? So I'm like, okay, let me listen to Hidden True Crime, right? I'm always kind of off and on with them. I'm not disparaging them in any way. They seem like a very nice couple, but I'm never like fully on board with what they say, which is one of the reasons why I watch them, because they're not jerks about it, but this rubbed me the wrong way. So if you're not familiar with Hidden True Crime is a wife and a husband. The wife, it used to be a newscaster, like on mainstream news, and she doesn't do that anymore. She has a YouTube channel and reports from there. And they did a lot with the Lori Vallow case because I think she was a Mormon and may not be anymore or something like that. But they did a ton with the Lori Vallow case and a lot of inside information. And I think their channel got really built up from that. And then Dr. John, who's her husband, is a forensic criminal psychologist. So he has opinions, obviously, just like if you listen to Andrea Burkhart, she's a defense attorney and she has her opinions. Well, Dr. John has his opinions based on his experience. And so I had caught a live from them a few weeks ago where he was basically saying that Richard Allen has dependent personality disorder and he has a history of depression and anxiety. And he, one of his confessions, he said that he raped the girls. And based on these facts, he painted this picture of Richard Allen as this like super creep who fantasized about doing this for months. And that's why he ended up killing them. Okay. And I'm just like, I don't really know if that makes sense to me. Like, I'm just thinking like, I'm not buying it. I know a lot of people with dependent personality disorder. I know a lot of people with depression, anxiety, and I'm just not connecting the dots, Dr. John. Help me out here. Well, clearly they're very happy that I don't know if she worked for News Nation. I feel like News Nation was one of the ones that was like, I feel like News Nation is actually like, they're one of the people that actually think Brian Koberger is innocent, or at least are fair about it. So I don't know who she worked for, to be honest. So let's see. I don't know. You don't need to be sorry. There's nothing. Sorry, couldn't help it. I'll move on. I don't know what's going on, but you don't need to be sorry. It's all good. My mod's in here. She always takes care of everything. She's awesome. Yeah, I know. Total bullshit, right? So wait, if that bothers you, okay, now check this out, okay? So clearly Dr. John and Lauren they're happy about this verdict, but they are getting beat up in their comments. They're like people who worship them essentially. You know how people worship some creators? It's like cult of personality. Like, I love this person. They can do no wrong. Like, those are the kind of people that these people have, right? And so they're like really hurt over the fact that people don't agree with them that Richard Allen is guilty, right? And Dr. John keeps saying it's okay if you have a different opinion, but his face just keeps getting redder and redder, and his expressions are just more and more filled with contempt. And he's like, well, then just let me know what it is. Like, show me the facts. So just watch this shit, because I was just like floored by this.
And I mean, if you want to know how people were tortured in the Middle Ages, go look it up. They didn't have tablets. They weren't able to talk to their families. I mean, it's a lot of people feel he was tortured. You know, I guess it depends on your definition of tortured. I would say that he felt like he was tortured.
Yeah, I believe that. I think he probably did feel tortured. And
I think that most people who are in a solitary confinement in a max security prison are going to feel like they're being fucking tortured. People who are only allowed out of their cell 1 hour a day or into another cage to talk to a Looney Tune psychologist are going to feel like they're being tortured.
Yeah. Yes. To him, it was torture.
But I think so I talked about this a little on Patreon, that, you know, one of the issues here has to do with the state. And, you know, you just said that the defense ended with that. This perception that Richard Allen is this innocent victim and he's being persecuted by the state for no reason whatsoever, that there's no evidence. Why did they even charge him, right? So I think there's this fear here that the legal system, the judicial system, is out to get people, innocent people like Richard Allen, with no evidence whatsoever. And presumably that if you get Richard Allen, we could, you know, tomorrow we're going to get you.
Yeah, that's exactly how people feel. And if you knew anything about the case, you might feel the same way, because they did get him with no fucking evidence. They did. Their evidence was 5 years later decide, oh, this guy was at the crime scene. We should investigate him. Oh, we're going to get a warrant. We go in your house and we find a gun, which was more than one, and knives, which are all legal, by the way. Oh, and it matches this unspent round that was at a murder scene where no one was shot. That's how he ended up in jail. And people think that he was this poor innocent little guy he was presumed innocent. Yes, he was presumed innocent. Yes, he is presumed innocent.
We're gonna pull you over for a broken tail light, and we're gonna haul you in, and we're gonna call you bridge guy, and we're gonna arrest you, and we're gonna charge you with a crime you didn't commit. Right? I think you've got this underlying paranoia here about.
I love this gaslighting bullshit. Listen to this. Now he thinks people who think like that have underlying paranoia. Oh, this is when I started getting pissed.
This persecution complex about the average person.
This is why I canceled my Factor subscription and switched to Cook Unity. After months with Factor, I got bored of eating the same boring meals. Cook Unity offers over 400 weekly meal options offered
in America is under siege and should worry about being charged with crimes they didn't commit. And Richard Allen is the poster child for this particular view.
See how angry he's getting? See how upset he is because people are questioning his authority on this shit? And if we question it and we think that it's fucked up that somebody was put into solitary confinement for 13 months, that we have, what did he say? That we have paranoid, intrusive paranoia.
Right. And so that's what the defense is playing up here. That's what they're playing on. That when you present a medieval torture chamber with some guy being tortured on a rack, like that is not authentic. That is not relevant.
And it doesn't need to be authentic because in closing arguments, you're allowed to do that. So yeah, he was upset that apparently in the closing statements from the defense, they presented some of these old torture devices that were used back in the day to get confessions and are probably still used in China. And you know what? Who knows? They might even be used in certain prisons around here, because we don't know what the hell goes on. And that prison that he was in Westville is being closed down, and it has been sued for violating the 8th Amendment of it's just normal prisoners, not even talking about one in solitary confinement. Okay. But yeah, they did that. Was that an emotional tactic? Absolutely. People do this shit in trials.
To this case, right? They're purely playing on people's emotions.
Correct.
And they're playing on the emotions of persecution of
Correct.
innocent people. It did happen. In the Middle Ages, people that had mental health problems, schizophrenia. Let's take schizophrenia. So in the Middle Ages, if you had schizophrenia and you were hearing voices, people thought you were possessed. They would throw you in dungeons. They would, drain your blood, torture you, try to exorcise the demons. Right? I mean, that's what they're trying to say.
Nobody's trying to say that. Calm down. Look at Lauren. She's even looking at him like, yeah, I don't think so. Nobody said that. Nobody is saying that. But I'll tell you something. What I'm not trying to do is downplay what happened to him like you are.
That's what they're trying to say, that there's no due process. There's no evidence that Richard Allen was tortured. He was arrested unfairly. To call the magic bullet a tragic bullet. I mean, yeah, I agree. It is tragic because it's on a crime scene where 2 innocent girls were brutally murdered.
Yeah.
Is it magic?
And they were not shot, though. Let's just all remember the fact that these girls were not shot.
Nope, it was in Richard Allen's gun. It's not a magic bullet. I mean, they're doing what a defense does. The reason there's no DNA on the crime scene is because, number one, it was outdoors. It's a lot harder to get DNA out of a crime scene that's in an area that's in a wooded area where there's rain and it's
Sorry, this sounds like mansplaining.
wet and clothes were put in the creek, right? Like
mansplaining.
And then why isn't there blood in his car? Because it's 5 years later.
That's a good point.
I mean, but I don't know. I mean, they're doing what a defense does. They're doing their job, and they're forcing the state.
That's a good point. It's 5 years later. Why did they wait 5 years to arrest him? How did they get to him 5 years later?
To make its case, and which is how the system works and how it should work. Do I have an opinion about, Richard Allen's guilt or innocence? I mean, probably, but I'm not going to express it here.
You don't need to. You don't need to withhold your opinion, Dr. Don. We already know what the opinion is. It's pretty obvious.
Talk about it later, but the question I come back to here is
presenting odd pieces.
That looks so cool. What is it?
It's a new.
And I always talk about this a lot, is weighing evidence. You can cherry pick evidence all day long, and you can make an argument based on cherry picking evidence. You can take one piece of evidence, and I guess we all do this, right? But some evidence counts more than other evidence. Some evidence is stronger and more compelling than other evidence. And whatever evidence you pick, if you argue that he's tortured, you got to show me, because that's not what the guard said.
That's not what the guard said. The guards that work at the prison, the guards that have since been fired, the guards that work at a prison that's been sued for violations of the 8th Amendment. That's not what the guard said. That's your argument.
He wasn't put on a rack and stretched, and his blood wasn't drained from him.
His blood wasn't drained from him, guys. Therefore, he was not tortured. Look at how angry he is.
Right? So I guess if you argue psychological torture, you can make that point. But
I guess if you argued psychological torture, you could make that point. See how dismissive he is over psychological torture? But yet he's a forensic criminal psychologist and just completely dismisses the psychological torture.
I will say this, though. There's research showing that juries are they're persuaded by the most coherent theory of the case that matches the evidence.
Okay, I'm done watching that one. Just one more. I know some of you guys are like, oh, please just get him off. But I think it's important. I do. I want to highlight this. I want to highlight this person's reaction because they are a professional in the legal system. and he evaluates people for criminal trials, and the contempt that he has and the disdain that he has for those of us who are calling out the fact that Richard Allen's rights have been violated irritates me. And I feel like it should be talked about. I'm sorry. So annoying. All right. Let's just play one more little clip here. Sorry, guys. It just pisses me off. It really does. Oops.
A lot of people wanted to coddle him and they didn't want to believe him, and they pushed back when he was trying to tell the truth. And they just, like his wife and mother, they just don't, they see him as a little kid who's not going to tell the truth, or they need to coddle him and protect him. And so I think when Chris Watts confesses, his dad takes him seriously because he knows his son is a independent person capable of making conscious choices, right? But when Richard Allen confesses, nobody takes him seriously because they see him as kind of this childlike, desperately needy guy. That
Disagree. So what he's talking about right now is basically, if people confess, everyone believes them, right? Number one, that's not true. I don't believe people who follow crime anyway, like we do, true crime, automatically believe a confession. There's just been too much evidence to the contrary. And there's a lot of research on false confessions and coerced confessions and things like that. So that his premise to begin with is faulty, in my opinion. However, why don't people believe Richard Allen when he confesses? Well, the only people that didn't believe him outside of the public when we have the trial going on is his wife and his mother. And the reason they don't believe him is because they know him. Just think to yourself, like if you got railroaded like this and you were going nuts and crazy, and all of a sudden you believe maybe I did do this. Why else would I be in this hellhole than if I actually did it, and started spewing out all kinds of shit? I know what my mom would be saying on the other end. Stop it. Shut up. You didn't do this. Stop it. Because they know they're being recorded. But his explanation, Dr. John's informed, educated explanation as a forensic criminal psychologist, is that because Richard Allen has a dependent personality disorder, that his mother and his wife just want to coddle him and treat him like a baby because he just doesn't know any better. Exactly. Whoops, sorry.
people have to take care of, right? And so I think that's part of the issue. There's an emotional pull here away from trusting him and believing him and kind of coddling him and infantile.
But when he was in the room, when he was called into the room 5 years later, 5 years, by the way, that went by where he did nothing criminal, behaved in no way, shape, or form suspect. And then, what did you call her? Roberta? Roberta from the volunteer secretary, retired secretary, decides this is an important tip and decides she wants to have him come in for questioning and passes off to the sheriff. And what did he say that day after he was as cooperative as he could be before he found out that they were putting their eyes on him? He said, "There's nothing you can do to me or say to me that will make me to confess to a crime that I didn't commit." That's what he said. That's what he said, Dr. John. Did you know that? I have a feeling you didn't. I don't think that you really looked into this case very much. That's just my opinion.
Infantilizing him and treating him like a kid. And people don't see children committing these types of horrendous acts.
When it comes to shopping for cookware, there's a lot of different options out on the market. Price point is important. Durability is important.
Somebody mentioned, I'm hardly seeing any of these chats. Thank you to those that are helping us pin. But I saw something saying beyond the confessions, there wasn't a lot of evidence. But I want to share that I saw a timeline that put Richard Allen on the bridge as Bridge Guy. I saw clothing that he was wearing that was similar to Bridge Guy. I saw a unspent cartridge that was matched to his gun. I saw a motive shared by Richard Allen, a motive of why, of what happened. I saw the entire crime scene start to make sense to me and what this was. And I also saw and understood a lot more about who Richard Allen is. To me, and the confessions, again, weren't just confessions. The confessions took you through the crime and what he did.
That is such an exaggeration, what she just said. All right, I've had enough, guy. I got to stop. Oops. Does it? Does it though? Sorry, guys. I can't with these two anymore. All right, I'm done. I can't with them anymore. Okay, I'm done. Sorry. I just yes, she does. She does. She does. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I get triggered by hostile men too. It makes me. I'm just gonna not say anything. So yeah, I tried to be as calm and collected as I could when I went through that, but I watching it for a second time, I just lost my marbles on that one. I'm sorry. It just irritates me. If he was I don't know, just a citizen journalist or a business guy who did YouTube with his wife, it wouldn't bother me as much. But because he is resting on his education and his profession, which is a criminal forensic psychologist, and he operates within this venue, that really bothers me. Because what the fuck? I mean, is it me? Like, I don't think it's just me. No, I don't, because there were other people on their channel commenting, and I didn't comment anything, and I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody, honestly. It bothers me a lot. It just really bothers me a lot. I couldn't find the clip. I wanted to find it, but basically he says, like, people keep saying he's in solitary confinement. It was just a single cell. What? Now you're going to downplay the fact that this man was in solitary confinement? Oh, and psychological torture. I mean, they could be talking about that, but I mean, that's not a big deal. What are you talking about? Is it time for some Wimmer thoughts? Whoops. Oops, sorry. Hey, Fitz, how are ya? She's hot. He's not. All right. Yeah, let me see. Let me get a link here. Hold on a second, guys. Whoops. Let's see. There we go. Okay. There we go. So what's going on, people? I just feel really bad about the whole thing. The whole thing is just... Oh, hold on one second. I see you, Mike, but you have no... They will need to connect their mic and cam before. Yeah, it says your mic and camera are not connected. So I can't add you. I can't add you until you connect. They will need to connect their mic cam before you can add them to the stream. So I don't know if you can try that, Wimmer. I know. I can't believe they found him guilty either. I mean, the only thing I think of is those jurors, even though people know who those jurors are that live in that town. And if they voted him not guilty, they may have had some problems, you know? They may have had some problems. That's the only thing I can think of. Wimmer, I'm going to kick you from the studio because, okay, it looks like you just left anyway. All right, maybe you can come back. I'll drop the link again here. I will drop the link again. Yeah, I agree, Leslie. I find it hard to believe they didn't know anything about the case. I mean, it just... Hi, Toes. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. My lordy, lordy. Yeah, I find it hard to believe that the people who live in that town really didn't know anything about it. The other thing that's interesting is, you know, they were sequestered, right? They were sequestered. And the only other times I remember juries being sequestered was O.J. Simpson and the Menendez brothers. And people were like, how long can they wait? Like, how long could we possibly, you know, have to wait, you know? Well, if you guys remember, the Menendez brothers was fucking months. They took months to come back with the verdict. Did you guys know that? It was like 4 or 5 months these people waited before they came back. That's crazy town. That's crazy town. I'm good. I'm good, Toes. I told everybody earlier, I do have a bruise there. I just, you know, I had to knock somebody out and they look a lot worse than me. So, you know, in case anybody's wondering. But yeah, it was like months. I think it was the first trial. It might have been the second one. I don't remember because I know they had 2 trials. But yeah, it took months. Wimmer, where are you? I don't know what happened. I dropped the link, but when he came, there was no mic or cam, so then he left. So I don't know if he's trying to figure something out. I think they had, so I think that, yeah, I think that their first trial was hung. And then their second trial was when they got convicted. And I think there was only 2, but I could be wrong. I'm not positive. Well, it doesn't show the icons. Which icons are you talking about? Like normally when you click on the link, it just lets you come into the chat. If you're on your phone, sometimes it'll say allow StreamYard to have access to my mic or camera or something like that. Yeah. It's usually on your end, like your phone or computer will request access to the mic and the camera, you know, for the video. That's at least that part works. Okay, so then I'm not sure. So when you said it doesn't show the icons, what doesn't show the icons then? That part, I'm confused about that. Leslie's saying you have to go to Safari. Hey, what up, Kane? What up, Kane? I was watching your show earlier. You have a good show. You have like lots of variety and stuff. I was watching that DNA thing though. People have to be careful with that whole DNA thing. I'm just going to tell you. What's this say? Person turquoise waving speech. Okay. Yeah, it was good. But so basically, the DNA thing. If you guys ever get your DNA tested, I'm going to give you a warning because they don't give you this warning when you try to get this, when you try to get it tested. Warning, you may find out that who you think is your father is not actually your father. Or who you thought was your grandfather was not actually your grandfather, and that could cause problems for, another family member. This is just a warning I'm giving because they don't give this warning to people when they do their DNA tests. And there's a whole group of people out there who have had this shit happen to them. There's a name for it. They have a Facebook group. But yeah, I know somebody that happened to. So it's just a warning. I'm not saying like you should worry about it. But if you are going to get your DNA tested, you should be aware that that shit can happen. And it does. And there's no emotional support when you find out. It's just like, oh, that's weird. It didn't happen to me or any family member I know, but yeah, they really should. I don't know, maybe they've changed it because when I did my DNA test, it was so long ago. And thank God it wasn't to 23andMe. Okay. And I opted out to share it with law enforcement, by the way. So if they ever try that bullshit with my DNA, I will sue their ass because I told them not for research purposes and not for law enforcement. And unfortunately, when I gave my DNA, it was before my third eye had opened. Okay. My third eye was very shut. It was like sealed tight as a motherfucker. And I gave it. Now that it's been opened, I would never have done that. But it's too late now. It's already been done. So it's okay. It's okay. At least I got to know exactly what my ethnicity is. And it gets updated all the time because the more people that come into the pool with their DNA, it becomes more accurate. And I don't know if you remember this, but there was a point where all the Italians were pissed off at Ancestry DNA because all of a sudden their percentage Italian went down. It was fucking hilarious. Like, Italians are very proud about their heritage. And I have some Italian heritage. But I mean, I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm pissed because it went from like 20% to like 8 or 12. Like, people were seriously pissed off that their Italian heritage decreased. But it's really just an algorithm, and it has to do with statistics and how many people come in, because they can't be 100% certain, But the more people that they have, the more accurate it gets. So my percentages have changed over the years. In general, the ethnicities have stayed the same, but they do get more accurate the bigger the pool, And I do have Viking blood, I found out, so that was cool. I know. Where are you, Wimmer? Where are you, Wimmer? Oh, okay, here he is again, but he still does not have a mic cam. It says they will need to connect their mic and camera before you can add them to the stream. I still can't add them. I don't know why. I do not know why. Let's see. Hold on. Settings. Guests. Guests can stream this. Guests see viewer comments and post. I don't have any banned guests. And I don't see anything here that I'm not doing on my end, Wimmer. People are frustrated, Wimmer. They want you up here, and I don't know how to get you up here. You have Neanderthal genes. Stop. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I have that. What's it called? Venetian. I forget. It's like it's Russian. I don't remember the name of it. There's a certain like old tree that branches off or whatever. Oh, I'm just busting you. Don't be sorry. I mean, we all just want to talk. We just want to hear from you. That's all. But yeah, like definitely keep working on it because I'd like to have you come up. Seriously, Firefly says. But that's just what the DNA company told you though. Let's be honest, right? Because like I know, like I just talked about it and stuff, but some of the other stuff I think they just I don't know. I'm not going to get into the whole evolution thing right now. It's too deep, guys. It's too deep. But I'm not a big believer in evolution. And before you say, "Oh well, it's science," yeah, it is science, and it doesn't fucking make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And even Darwin himself didn't actually believe in it after a while. There's books written by Darwin that nobody talks about where they talk about it. It is interesting though. No, I totally agree. I totally agree. I just am not of the belief that we are evolved from monkeys. I just no. Nope. Sorry. And it has nothing to do with Christianity or any other religion. It just has to do with it doesn't make any fucking sense. Okay. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's actually a fascinating topic. And the reason I looked into it is because like everything else that I was taught growing up, I decided to question it. And I just found a lot of really interesting stuff. And there are a lot of scientists, like actual PhDs and things like that in science, who also feel that the evolution theory is bullshit. The other thing that's interesting about the evolution theory, the Scopes trial or the quote monkey trial, very interesting. That was when they decided that they wanted to teach evolution in the public schools. And it was a big deal back then because prior to that, the only thing that was taught in terms of where we came from was the creation story in the Bible. And when they decided that they wanted to teach evolution, this newfangled theory from Darwin the atheist or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter, but you get it, right? What happened was it's just like everything else, guys. That thing was a setup. It was a setup. They went and they got, I forget the attorney's name, but he was a very well-known attorney at the time. They got him, and then they got a teacher to say that he wanted to teach it. And he was like a substitute teacher. He wasn't even like a major teacher in the school. And they created this whole big hullabaloo about it. And they put on a trial in front of the country. Everybody was watching it closely because people only wanted to know about creation at the time. And these people were coming in saying, we want to talk about evolution and how we all evolved from apes. And, they won the trial, the Scopes trial, and then they allowed people to teach evolution in the public schools. And that's where it all started. But it was all just a big hoax bullshit trial that was orchestrated for the masses. It's really interesting. You should look into the monkey trial sometimes or the Scopes trial, and you'll see. It's just like a lot of other stuff. It was all theater for the masses and the public. And, evolution is a theory. It's not a fact. People get really bent up over this shit. Like, people get really angry when I say this, but I'm sorry, it is. It's a theory. It's never been proven. If humans were actually, like, if evolution actually happened as fast as Darwin says it does, like, we would already have been evolved. Like, shit, we would have been evolved to have, like, 3 fingers that are. I mean, it doesn't work that way. It hasn't worked that way. We still have our appendix, right? Why haven't our appendix fallen off yet? Why are new babies not being born without appendix if we're evolving? Because we're not. But that's not the only reason. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. What the founder of NASA has on his tombstone. No, I don't. I do not know. Well, I told you guys what the founder. I told you guys what pepperoni. So, Case Western Reserve completed the first head transplant using monkeys. It lived for 3 days post-surgery. Ugh, Jesus. Genesis 16 about God creating the firmament. Yeah, I mean, I believe it. I mean, NASA's bullshit. I mean, who thinks that the stuff that they show us is real? I love how they show us these planets. Have you ever looked at the planets and zoomed in? Even on my iPhone, I zoom in the planets. They look like reflectors. They literally look like giant reflectors. They don't look like solid masses that are being suspended in like jello. I don't know. Does this make any sense to anybody? Please. I mean, it's just bullshit. I was on a kick for a while. I would go out and look at the night sky and the weirdest stuff you see. And then the plant, like, I just can't. I mean, sometimes the planets are really close and you can see them with your naked eye, and all they ever look like are giant reflectors. That's all they ever look like. You're in space. Hey, I'm going to drop the link if anybody wants to come up. Wimmer has been invited, but he's having some technical difficulties, and just going to drop it here. If anybody would like to join me. Yeah, I mean, what do they do with all that money from NASA? Honestly, where is all the money that NASA gets? Like, what are they spending it on? And who believes that Israel actually has an Iron Dome? Like, who actually believes that they have an Iron Dome? I have some pics of the sun that look like that. You ever see what they show angels to look like? Kind of like how planets look like. That's interesting. I really I just feel like everything that they've taught us is just not. And honestly, and then when you say things like this, people are like, "You're stupid. You're a conspiracy theorist." Like, I don't care what you say about me. I just, like, I'm not going to be fooled by this bullshit. Like, I'm just not, right? I'm still having mic issues at post work and burn. Okay, cool. That's fine. That's no worries. We went to the moon the first 5 years of NASA, but haven't been back. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Even Russia calls our bullshit out on that. Even Russia's like, yeah, the Americans' conspiracy of going to the moon. No country has gone to the moon, period. None. None. And then the guys are like, well, we would go back to the moon, but we've lost the technology. Okay. We'll build it again if you're so genius that you went to the moon in the first place and you called the president on a phone from the moon. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. That's why the newscasters, if you watch afterwards, they're laughing because they know they're full of shit. It keeps saying add mic on your toolbar. Oh, but you cannot see the mic? It might be in your settings. Oh, yeah. Elon's interesting, right? I don't trust Elon Musk for shit. I'm just going to say it right now. I don't trust him for shit. Okay. Don't trust him. I think he may be some sort of hybrid human. Okay. I'm just saying it. He's got that odd look about him that he's some sort of hybrid. And here's the other thing that's interesting to me about Elon Musk. Okay. So there's a connection between Elon Musk and JD Vance. Did you guys know that? It just kind of like went off the other day. Oh no, I'm sorry if you believed it. Listen, you can still believe it. You can totally believe it. This is my opinion after doing hours of research and looking into it. And I just don't believe it. I cannot with Vance. Yeah, so JD Vance. Okay, JD Vance is really good friends with Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk created, I think it was PayPal back in the day. PayPal. And that, that was so long ago, but it was a great idea and they made money. And then they had some kind of falling out. But Peter Thiel has been in the background of this whole revolution with technology and everything else for years and years and years. Okay. And then Peter Thiel is friends with JD Vance. They're friends. And they're interested in like this AI and all this other shit, right? And then all of a sudden, he's chosen as Trump's VP, which I think is more the reason why he was chosen because of this technology shit. And then all of a sudden, Elon Musk shows up and it's like representing Trump. There is some sort of AI connection here in the background with Trump. And I just have to do a little bit more research to find out what it is. But he's got backing from these technology gurus like Peter Thiel, like Elon Musk, obviously. But there are some others, and he's definitely got backing from them. And I'm not a big fan of it because, we already know what they do in China. I mean, you just walk into a store, nobody waits on you. You put your finger over something and pay for it and walk out. If you don't say hi or pick up your neighbor's trash, you get a lower social credit score. That's the kind of shit they do in China. That's what they do with technology, and I don't like it at all. So the whole flat earth thing, and this is my opinion. Anybody can come up to, anybody's welcome to come and talk, but this is my opinion. I don't think that the earth is flat, but I also don't think that it's round. I think that it's a torus. I think the earth is a torus, just like our bodies, like the energy fields. I think it goes like this, and in the center is a hole. So let me see if I can find a picture of what I'm talking about. Hold on a second, guys. Whoops. I'm going to share the torus earth. This is pretty wild.
Hi, my name is Henry Segerman. This is Taurus Earth. This is joint work with Saul Schleimer. So this is a similar sort of idea to another project we worked on, which is Twisted Earth, in that it's the Earth, or the surface of the Earth, put onto a surface that is not a sphere. So what's happening here? So here I've got North America, South America, Asia, Europe, Africa, and so on. We go west of Europe, across the Atlantic, we get to North America, South America again, as you would expect. In fact, so if you turn this over, the two sides are identical. You get exactly the same picture. So there's twice as much Earth as there is on the usual sphere. Right, what's going on? Something is breaking somewhere. Well, let's look up at the North Pole. You can see there's actually a hole in the model, and you can see there's 2 copies of Greenland around this North Pole. In fact, there's a branch point here is one way to say it. So the usual texture of the Earth has got sort of unrolled twice around this North Pole. And so you see 2 copies of the nearby features. So, well, what about the South Pole? There's Antarctica, you can just see on the inside of the torus. And again, there's this little promontory that goes out towards South America. On the other side, it's the same thing again. And there's 2 more poles going through. Here's one which is actually in between Africa and South America in the Atlantic. And then the other one is in the Pacific. It's a little hard to see. It's sort of near to Australia. So here's a 3D model. It's up on Sketchfab. You can actually go and play with this yourself. The link's in the description below. of the usual Earth on a sphere with these 4 points marked. And so what's happened here is, let me get a skewer here so I can show you what's going on. So if I put a skewer through the 4 holes here, there's this sort of map which goes from the torus down to the sphere. And well, the idea is that if you kind of do a spit roast, if you